training, employment, voluntary work, assistance, dealing with landlords and employers, housing and homelessness, domestic violence, and helping them to understand their rights and where to go for help and support when they need it, providing assistance with the health service and integrating their children into the education system. EU Welcome wish to ensure that all their clients understand their rights in the UK and can play their part to make Southampton an even better place in which to live and work. Dave has lived in Southampton for 40 years.
Indeed.
And has worked as a school teacher and as a church pastor and as the producer of Morning Thought for the BBC Radio Solent channel. He's a member of the Southampton Fairness Commission and, as we said, is project manager for EU Welcome. So, Dave, we're really happy that you're here tonight, and we're looking forward to this debate.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's well, it's nice to be with you all. Where to start? I'll perhaps tell you a little bit about EU Welcome, and then I think what you're particularly interested in is post-referendum. How are people feeling? And I'll get on to that as soon as I can. So, EU Welcome it predated me. It began in 2004 when 8 new countries joined the EU. You've heard most of them, their names read out there. And there was some discussion. It was in those heady days when the council had a little bit of spare money. And the council were in discussion with a gentleman who was the Catholic priest then for the church just up there over the road. And the priest had noticed that lots of young Poles were beginning to attend Mass. And as I say, the council had some money which was for new communities at the time. And a little bit of a dare, really. They said, well, if we give you some money, will you set up an organisation to work with these people and try and help and support them? And that was where EU Welcome began. I came in about a year later because, like a lot of projects, it had a bit of a false start. And a year later, I'd resigned from a job that I've been doing for about 24 years, and I decided then that I wanted to look for different part-time jobs, partly because I'm probably not got very high concentration levels, and so doing different things sort of suits me really. So you've heard I work a bit for the BBC. I'm also a funeral celebrant, and I'm also a tour guide in Southampton as well. So I do different things, and I like doing that. So anyway, the job came up, and I'm sure some of you have had similar experiences. I applied and was appointed, and I think then it was 20 hours a week. I'm now 15 hours a week. And I kept thinking someone was going to tell me what to do. And then I realised after a while that nobody was. And so I had to almost set up the project through trial and error, really. And so my first sort of challenge was to try and meet some of these people. And so I'm not a Catholic, but I attended the Polish Catholic Mass on a Saturday evening at 7 p.m. and just sort of sat there and hoped someone might speak to me. And eventually one or two people did, and I'd then sort of offer them coffee. Please, let's have a coffee together, let's talk. And my aim was to find out what the needs were. So that's how the project began. Now there's 3 of us who work part-time in the project. There's myself, and there's who's now the project manager, and then there's 2 project workers who are both Polish. And so that's what we do. We haven't got an office. I've really enjoyed the sense of flexibility that we work with. So we borrow other people's offices. We use our mobile phones and our laptops and things like that to do the work, and that's been good. So my 2 colleagues tend to work with people with limited English, whereas I work with people who already have a decent amount of English, and I suppose I'm quite passionate about people really fulfilling their destinies. One thing I found quite sad was when you met someone and you said, well, what are you doing? And they said, well, I've only been here a year and I'm working as a cleaner, I'm working, in a salad factory or wherever. Oh, what did you do in Poland? Oh, I did my master's degree, and you think, wow, well, that's wonderful that you're prepared to be a cleaner, serve coffee, work in a hotel, work in the salad factory. But I like nagging people, really, and I'm always saying to people, when you were growing up, what did you want to do? And well, let's see, if there's any way you can do that. And the lovely thing is, over the years, there's people who have really moved on, and there's people doing some great jobs now that would have been their dream when they came here, so that's good, although other people are still stuck out of interest. Our clientele, when we started, it was about 90% Polish, but that's changed, and I'd say it's about 70% Polish now. We've got, as well as, and actually you reading out from our website what we do reminds me that we need to update the website, really, because although we started off working with those 8 countries that joined in 2004, and then Romania and Bulgaria, who joined in 2007, we do a lot of work now with Spanish people. There's a large Spanish community in Southampton. If you look on Facebook, there's 2 groups of Spanish in Southampton, and each of those has over 3,000 members, which doesn't mean they're all living here now, but it shows there's a lot of people. I think I heard at one point that there's 600 Spanish nurses at the hospital, and obviously Portuguese people as well. A lot of Portuguese people work in healthcare, and so we've broadened, and I'd say, as I say, 70% of our work is with Polish and 30% with people from other countries, and we bring in volunteers who help us. We've got a wonderful young woman who works at Solent University who's Bulgarian, and she's done various seminars in Bulgarian on things like CV writing and job interviews and things like that. So it's been wonderful. For me as a slightly older person, the kind of the enthusiasm and the kind of commitment of a lot of the young people I've worked with has been wonderful, and has really kept me going in the job. So I'm going to jump. There will be plenty of time for questions. I don't aim to speak too long, but I'm going to jump now to June last year and the referendum and everything. And I went to bed on the day of the referendum, and I had just heard, I think, the 10 o'clock news, and Nigel Farage had said, well, it's a close run thing, but we've lost. Yes. I went to bed with news that the pound had strengthened against the euro and other currencies, and things were all rosy in the garden. And then I woke up about 5 in the morning, put on my radio, expecting to hear that we were staying in the EU, and it was one of those moments that one will always remember, just as the news dawned that, well, this wasn't going to happen. And I went downstairs, and as I say, I do a lot of work online, and through Messenger and things like this. And as soon as I logged onto my computer, a Lithuanian lady sent me a message, and she said, Dave, I've just heard the news. She said, I'm going to France on holiday next week. Will I be allowed back in? Now, for those of us, who've been in this country for years and of a certain experience, in some ways it was a crazy question, and of course I was able to reassure her, yes, of course you'll get back in. And I don't think I'd heard of Article 50 at the time, but I knew that it wasn't going to be immediate. And then one of our Polish volunteers contacted me and said, this is still 6 o'clock in the morning. Dave, I've just had my mum on the phone and she's in tears. She's saying, when this happens, will I need a visa when I come and visit you? And, well, that one I thought, I don't know the answer to that. And in some ways, whatever reassurance politicians are sort of giving us, that there is no assurance because nothing has been decided. And then I think as a couple of days went on, I had at least 2 people contact me saying, can you help me? Our children have got an issue at school. And I said, well, tell me about it. And the issue was school kids saying, you've got to go home now, you've got to go back to your country. And the parents not convinced that the school were really clamping down on this. So I helped the parents write a letter to the head teachers and things like that. So that was the immediate. Where are we now? I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. Let's tell you another very early story. And another girl had been a volunteer for us, asked to see me. And now, she's Polish. She's got a long-term partner now who's English. I think I can say she works at Ordnance Survey, so good job, established company. She's even bought a house in Southampton. But she said, do you know what's annoying me now? She said, and she's wonderfully blunt. She said, it's people telling me, you'll be all right, don't worry, you won't have to go. And me thinking, I'm not sure that I want to be in this country anymore. Because she said this, when I came to this country, firstly, I came because I thought I've got a vision for Europe, and I felt we were a part of Europe. Secondly, she liked the tolerance, multiculturalism, liberality almost of this country, but I'm not sure whether that's still there. And she then smiled at me and she said, thirdly, she said, the pound was good against the zloty, and it's gone down a lot in the last few weeks. And so she said, I don't know whether I want to stay here anymore. So she said, don't you and other people give me the you'll be all right. And I was reminded when I was a kid at school, I was brought up in London. I was born November 54, early 60s. I was at school in London. And we had in my school the first boy from the Indian subcontinent came into our class. He was from Pakistan, and he was called Mahmood Bashir. And Mahmood was easily accepted within the class. He had a slight accent, but he played football with us, no trouble. And then one day, the class sort of hard nut really came into school, and he was chanting, "We hate," and he was using a racist word. And someone, "Shh, what about Mahmood?" And he said, "Oh, he's Mahmood." And this whole thing of when we know someone, of course we want you to stay, but it's the others we don't want to stay. And I can see that happening such a lot, so that people who know people, and even I swapped emails with a local politician this week, and he said, I have huge respect for the EU migrants that are my neighbours and everything. And I thought, but it's almost like, again, the ones down my road can stay because they're quite nice, but it's the others that I'm worried about. And there is that, that there is that strangeness that we have. So since then, since those early days, a lot of insecurity which continues. Some people certainly very unsure about their future, some thinking perhaps they will try and go back. But one thing I've always felt on that is that people aren't, we use this phrase economic migrants. And there are people who are here because they could make money quicker and could improve their lifestyle quicker by being here. And yet, there's so many that are here because they felt, and it is a credit to us as a nation, that they could be who they wanted to be here. Poland is quite a strict Catholic country. I'm not giving away things by saying that even some of the Catholic priests here are quite shocked by what Catholic priests in Poland can preach and say at times. I think that's, I don't think they would mind me saying that. And so you can be who you want to be. I remember once actually meeting a Lithuanian girl some years ago, and I met her with her mixed race son. And she was a single mum by then. I don't know anything about her story, but she talked to me, and then she looked at her son and said, of course, I can't go back to Lithuania. And I said, why not, sort of thing, and played the innocent and the ignorant. And she said, well, he would be the only person of colour in our small town. I just don't feel that would, and she said, people aren't tolerant. And whereas she said here, and she was having a tough time, I can, no one bothers. No one bothers that I'm a single mum. No one bothers that my child is mixed race. I get on with life. I met a Polish Jehovah's Witness once, and there is and it's really interesting what there is out there that I'm always still discovering. And this Polish Jehovah's Witness told me that they have Bible studies in Polish, at one of the kingdom halls. And then I said, don't take this wrong, but I said, we're not always very keen on Jehovah's Witnesses here. People get a bit fed up with the, knocking on the doors and everything. And he said, yeah, but no one's ever hit me here. Oh, right. There are... my kind of church background is quite sort of happy-clappy, sort of evangelical kind of thing. And there are some Polish groups like that are here, that meet in Shirley. And they can meet here freely without anybody saying, oh, you're not a licensed church, and things like that. People who are gay find it a lot easier living here. Because of the way we are, the tolerance. So a lot of people are here for that reason. So actually, even if the pound continued to drop against the euro or the zloty or whatever it was, a lot of people would still prefer to be here, but they are having doubts now. And then there's how we interpret things. If someone's rude to me, how do I interpret it? They don't like, older English gentlemen with white hair. Maybe. But let me give you an example. Soon after Brexit, a Polish girl rang me up and she said, I had a terrible day. I said, well, what's happened? She said, I was travelling on a train back from London. A friend rang me up. I picked up my phone and I was just chatting to her in Polish, and this man was giving me awful looks from across the sea. And she said, I knew that he was a Brexiteer, you see. And I thought, well, actually, if I was talking in a loud voice on my phone in English, that same gentleman might have given me a look, and I would have just thought, what do I do? Do I carry on? Do I, do I apologise? But her interpretation of that was that it was because she was speaking in Polish. It might have been, but I don't know. And a few weeks ago now, there's some Polish coach companies that work regularly from Southampton and take people who are going home for the week or whatever back to Poland, and at a good price. One of them got the coach driver was staying in the Ibis hotel and overnight, ready to go off next morning, and the coach got vandalised. And now there were no racist slogans put on. There were some slogans, but the police assure that they were what they called the tagline of the people that did it. It was really just saying, like, Kilroy was here. It was, which is a fairly dumb thing to do, I would have thought. But anyway, but it was interpreted in the local Polish media that this was a racist attack. And in fact, we got the police to tag it as such, which initially they didn't. Initially they said it was just vandalism, you see. And when I was able to contact, I've got a very loyal contact within the police, and I said to him, look, it's being perceived as racist, as a hate crime. And as he said to me, well, if it's perceived as such, then it is, according to our classification. And he got it tagged as such. And that got changed. But you see what I mean? Things like that really frighten people. The woman that got pushed out of a window near Bedford Place a few weeks ago, if you follow the Echo, it was on there. She was Polish. I think the people who are suspected of being the perpetrators of that were themselves Polish. But again, immediately there's fear that people feel. Is this a race crime? Is this happening to us? And so there is a huge amount of uncertainty. I think perhaps I'll stop there, and hopefully I've provoked you, and you might ask me some things now.